In today's tutorial, we're going to be looking at four key aspects of Power BI. And we're going to be looking at working with text. We'll also look at working with numeric values. We'll see how to work with numeric values. We'll also look at how to round up values. Then we will look at how to work with date and time. We'll also look at how to work with index columns. Another thing we're going to also consider is how to add conditional columns and many more things as we move on. But in our last class, we tried to look at how to connect data from Power BI. And don't forget that in our previous classes, we took time to go through the Power BI interface, where we saw the three core views of Power BI. I can say three core views plus one, because the recent versions of Power BI, we add additional icon here, but we're going to look at it as we progress. So we look at the report view, we look at the table view, and we look at the model view. And if you look at the report view, by the canvas here, you will see some data connectors available. You can see import data from Excel. You can see import data from SQL and the rest of them. We will gradually look at them as we move on. Don't forget, we've talked about the menus, the file, the home, the insert, and the rest of them. But I recall that in our last class, we extensively looked at the query editor. But before we looked at the query editor, we tried to connect data from a particular source. Don't forget that we have our data set here in a folder, Power BI class. When you open this folder, you can see under folder, Adventure Works raw file, which is the file we're going to use extensively to look at a lot of exploratory data analysis. We have another data set that we're going to use later. But what we will simply do now is to connect to a data set, just as you've always known how to do that, from the get data. From the get data, you click on it, and you can now see many connectors. Remember, we said that Power BI supports many connectors. You see the files, the database. If you are connecting from a file, you choose from file. If you're connecting from database, choose from database, and the rest of them. And our Adventure Works data set that we want to connect to now is a file, and it's classified as a CSV file. A CSV file. Let me take you back again. If I minimize now, let me explain a little bit what I mean by a CSV file. If you open this data set and you go to this folder, you will notice the Power BI, you will notice the Excel files, or it looks like Excel files, but they are not truly Excel files. They are CSV files. CSV means comma separated value. If you look at any of these files, to know the type of file it is, what you may simply need to do is to right-click on the file and you go to File Properties here. If you select Properties, you will see Type of File. Microsoft Excel, comma separated value file. That .csv file. .csv is the file format. That is the file format. So the files or the data sets we are given for this analysis they're all CSV files. So because we are connecting to CSV files, we simply click on Get Data, and when we come to File, instead of selecting Excel file, we will select Text/CSV. Then click on Connect. When we click on Connect, we'll navigate to the location where the file is. Remember, the file is on the desktop. On the desktop, you look for the folder name, data analysis class, or Power BI class, as look at it, Power BI class. Double click on it, you will see AdventureWorks raw file, raw data. Double click on it, and you will see all the files, all the data set here. For now, we are going to connect to all these data sets. And how do we do that? I think we've done that before. Let me begin from AdventureWorks calendar lookup. If I click on it, I will click on Open. And when the connection is on now, you wait for a few seconds and this dialog box opens for you. Now you have an option to either load or transform. You choose load when the data set you're connecting to is already clean. But if the data set requires some transformation or some cleaning, I strongly recommend you choose transform. But for the purpose of this class, because we are dealing with a data set with which we will use to learn more about Power BI, I'd like us to click on Transform Data. And when we click on Transform Data, now it opens us to Power Query Editor. The Power Query Editor. Remember, in our previous class, I explained to us that the Power BI has two different interfaces. The first interface is the model view, which you see by default when Power BI opens. And the second interface is the one we can see now, which is the Power Query Editor. The Power Query Editor, like we learned about it before now, is the environment where you can perform data transformation and some kind of data cleaning. So you can see that we have connected to one table, AdventureWorks calendar lookup table. The first activity I want to carry out here is to notice that the name of the data set is long and I want to reduce it. So I want to call it calendar. So I edit it from the properties, remember? And I call it calendar. And if you look at where the queries, it has not changed until you click this environment. You notice that the name of the data set will change. Remember, at this point, the data set is seen to be a query because you queried a data set from the source. So we have the source. If I minimize This is the source, Power BI class folder. This is the source. And I've now performed a connection, and this is the connection. Now, if that's all I want to do, I will click on Home and click on Close and Apply. And that will end up loading this data from the query editor down to the data model or to the model view. Now you can see that the calendar lookup is loading now, and eventually it will load completely down to the model view. If I want to perform more connections, I will go back again to my get data. This time around, I also select my CSV file and click on connect. Then I go to I can choose to select the customer lookup table. But for the purpose of what I want to begin with, let me choose the customer lookup table. Then I click on open. And this dialog box opens for me. Because I have some data cleaning and data transformation to perform, at least for learning purposes, I will click on transform data. And that takes me back again to the query editor. Once again, the file, the data set name is too long. So I want to just call it customer. This represents the customer data set. And once I finish editing it here, I click here and it changes. Now I have two queries connected. If I want to go ahead to connect more queries, I don't need to load. It is not a must I will have to load by clicking close and apply. I can go ahead and connect to more data from the Power Query editor. Now let me show you how to load, how to connect to data set from the Power Query editor. You can choose the new source. If you click on new source, it opens you up to the data connectors, and you select the CSV file again, click connect, and I want to connect to the product category table, and click on open, and that will connect to it also. I click on OK, and the connection has been done. I will also want to go ahead to edit it to product category. I want to call the table product category. So I come here and choose product category and click here, and that's okay. Now we will go ahead to connect to other data sets as we move on. But I would like you to understand something very important. These are calendar data sets. These are customer data sets. These are product category. More data sets will be connected to later. But I want to call your attention to something very important. If you look at this Power Query editor, you will notice that Power Query divided its commands into groups. If you possibly look at the Power Query, you will see the tabs, the Home tab, the Transform tab, the Add Column tab, View, Tools, and Help. But three major tabs we're going to be looking at is the Transform, the Column, and the Home. You look at the Home, the Transform, and the Add Column. These three tabs play very important roles in Power Query editor. Now, looking at the Transform tab on the Query editor, look at the Transform tab on the Query editor. You will notice that Power BI groups different sets of tools together based on their purpose or functions. Look at this now. If you are conversant with other Office applications, you will notice that also, that from this transform tab, you will see this particular group, the table group. You will see another group, any column group. You will see another group, text column. You will see another group, number column. You will see another group, date and time column. And you will see scripts. Now, Power BI groups these commands following their purpose and their functions. So we are going to be looking at some of the important groups that will help us in what we call exploratory data analysis. When we are working with a data set, you are expected to explore the data. When you explore the data set, you have a better understanding of the data set. Oftentimes, the exploratory process might not appear in your analysis, but it will give you an idea of what you are doing. So that is the reason why it is called exploratory data analysis, because it tends to give you a holistic idea of the data set you are working with. Remember, I've always encouraged us to become conversant with the data set you're working with. It's just like you're working in an office and suddenly somebody was employed by the company, or the company employs another staff to come and assist you. One of the things you need to do is to understand the person well and what is capable of doing. That's exactly what happens to data sets. You don't just dabble into data sets. Of course, there are so many things I'm going to still tell you about data sets. But for now, you don't dabble into the data set and begin to run analysis. You need to have a holistic understanding of the data set you're working with. That is exactly the only way you will be able to know what possible analysis can I draw from the data set. And to do that, you perform what we call exploratory data analysis, EDA. Exploratory data analysis, EDA. And to perform this exploratory data analysis, there are certain tools and commands that will help you to do it. And these tools also can also help you beyond exploratory data analysis. They can help you for data cleaning. It can also help you for data transformation. So these are the tools we actually want to look at. Now listen very well. Data cleaning and data transformation is where the real work is. When data set is properly cleaned and transformed, analysis becomes a simple thing. So being able to transform your data to be able to bring out the necessary meanings, that is insights from the data, is very important. That's the reason why this aspect is so important. So you listen very well. You can rewind the video over and over again so that you can be able to understand what I'm talking about. Now, if you look at the transform tab, take note of the fact that the commands in the ribbon, this environment you're seeing is called the ribbon. The commands in the ribbon are divided into groups: the table group, any group, text column group, number column group, date and time group. This has to do with their functions. Now, let's take note of the following. I want us to give our first interest will be on the text column. because we want to learn how to work with text. How to work with text. Now, if you look at the text column, you will see the commands available there. If you point the cursor on each of the commands, you will notice that their name will also appear bold. But eventually your own is not displaying their names, but only the icons. Just point the cursor on the icon. I didn't say click. I said point the cursor on the icon and you will see the name appear. I strongly recommend that you do these things as I say them. If you do it as I say them, you will understand these things very well. Now look at the split column. The split column is used for splitting columns. This is format. We use this for formatting our columns. You see merge columns. You use it when you want to merge columns. We're going to look at that now. You see extract and you see pass. Now we're going to look at how some of these things work. Now, but please note this. Most of the commands you can see here in Transform tab, you can also see them in Add column. Now the question is, what is the difference? Now please pay attention. For instance, if you look at Transform tab, you will see the text column, you will see the number column, and you will see the date and time. If you also go to the Add column, you will see from text, which is almost the same thing as what we saw in Transform column. You can see the same commands are there. You can see them. You also look at from number. From number is also exactly the same thing you saw when we saw number column. Then you look at from date and time. That's equivalent to what we saw also when we were dealing with date and time. Now, the question is now, what is the difference between when I go to Transform tab and I select a command and when I go to Add column and I select the same command here? Very important and very interesting. Now listen, when you go to Transform and you select a command, what you are doing is you are trying to modify that column. For instance, if I click on first name, look at this. If I click on the column name, you can see the column name, customer key, prefix, first name, last name. If you click on the column name, the entire column will be highlighted, just as in Excel. If you click on the row number, the entire row will be highlighted. So if I want to perform any function or carry out any transformation on a particular column, maybe the first name, I will click on the column header. And once I click on the column header, the entire column will be highlighted. Then if I now go to Transform, it means I want to perform a transformation on this first name column. But if I go to Add column, it means that I am not only performing a transformation, but I want to add a column. So when there is a need for me to add a new column from an existing column, I use Add column. That's why the name is Add column. Let me repeat this again. Whenever there is a need for me to generate a new column from an already existing column, I will use Add column. But if what I want is to transform the existing column, I will simply use Transform. I believe that is very clear. Okay, we might need to take some examples now, because without examples, human mind is at 0. So we're going to work on this column prefix. If you look at this prefix now, you will notice that it is formatted in capital letter. It is formatted in capital letter. Now, I will highlight the entire column by clicking on the column header. I will go to transform tab because we are dealing with transform tab for now. Now, if I come to text column, I will go to the format option. Click on this drop down. Whenever you see a drop down, it means that there are options that will fly out. And when I click on the drop down, I can see lowercase, uppercase, capitalize each word, and the rest of them. If I click on lowercase, you will notice that the prefix has been changed to lowercase. And if you look at the apply step here, the apply step has reported that a lowercase text has been applied. If I want to reverse what I've just done now, I will click on this X button and it will reverse. So I have the first name. I can click on the column header, go to format. I want to capitalize each word. And you can see each word has been capitalized. I'll do the same for prefix. Go again, capitalize each word. Each first letter has been capitalized. Go again to last name, go to format, and capitalize each word, which means that each first letter will be capitalized. So you can now see a simple transformation that I have applied between the prefix, the first name, and the last name. That is quite amazing. That is just to apply the uppercase and the lowercase. Remember, it's from format. You can try out lowercase, try out uppercase, and try out the rest of the options so that you can be able to see how it looks like. That is very much amazing. Now, let me show you something. If you come to the add column, you will also look around under front text. You will see format, system options. What happens when if I click on prefix and I come to add column and I click on format and I say uppercase, what will happen? You will notice that a new column has been added for me here. Now, if you go back, you will see that the prefix still remains untouched. So, but it added a new column for me here and captioned it uppercase. Why? Because what I asked for, I went to add column and I said format to uppercase. So whenever you choose add column, recall that what you simply want to do is whatever formatting it will give you, it will add a new column for you. And because I don't need this, I will simply click on this X button to make a reversal of it. And I return back to this again. That is very much amazing. And I'd like us to move on. You can pause the video and try to go through it again. Try to capture the first point I've made before you go into another point. The second thing I'd like us to look at is, remember, we are still working with the transform. And under the transform, we are still looking at the text column. That is working with text. So we want to see some commands here that are going to be useful for what we're going to. The next thing we're going to look at is how to merge field. How to merge field. Merging. Now, this is a field. This is a field. And this is a field. If I am carrying out my analysis, it might not be healthy for me to have first name, last name, prefix in different columns. And I want to have the three of them together. For instance, I want to have the first name read Mr. John Yang as a column. If that is the case, it means I'm going to merge the three columns now. So how do we merge the three columns? How do we merge the three columns so that it can become one column? Very simple. The first step is for me to highlight these three columns together. How do I highlight the three of them together? I will highlight the first one, clicking on the column header. Then I will hold down my control key. Look at your keyboard. You will see the control key. Hold down the control key, then highlight the second one, and then the third one. You can see the three of them are highlighted. Let me repeat this. If I click outside, the highlight goes. I click on the first column first, the first column of interest, prefix. Then I hold down my control key. Look at your keyboard. You will see the control key. You hold it down. Then you click on the first name and then the last name. The three of them are highlighted now. Then if you now look, you will see that the merge column is now highlighted also. From the transform tab, you go to the text column group. You see the merge column. Now I click on the merge column. If I click on the merge column, a dialog box will appear. That is the merge column dialog box. Now asking me to choose how to merge the selected column. The first option is for me to choose my separator. If you click on this drop-down arrow, you see many separators. And do you want to separate them with a column or with a comma? For me, I want to separate the three columns with a space. So I select space. Then it will ask me now, what do I want to call the new column? I want to call it full name. So I will type full name. And when I type full name, I can now go ahead and click OK. And automatically, you will see the column has been merged. And you can see that's quite amazing. Please try it on your own. Pause the video. Try it on your own before you continue. Try to get each step before the other. That is learning. So you can see that the three columns have been merged. But let me show you something now. Remember, I did this from the transform. What if I've done it from add column? Let me reverse this. To reverse this, I click on this X. It reverses it back again. Now, I select this column, hold my control key, select this and this. Then instead of choosing transform, I go to add column. Add column. And once I click on add column, I will now have to look for the merge column. Once I click on merge column, the same dialog box appears. I click on the drop down, select space, then highlight this and call it full name. Full name, then I click OK. Now, it will create a new column for me. Now, look at the three columns I made. They're still the same. Nothing happened to them. But if you scroll down to the end, you will see a new column, full name, created for us. Now, this is recommended when you want to still preserve the original columns as they were. And then you can now create a new one for the purpose of your analysis. That is very much amazing. I believe you've understood that now. Take them, pause the video, try it, and then we continue. So the next thing we're going to look at, I told you we're going to look at so many things today, and all these things are going to help us in our analysis as we are moving in. The next thing we're going to look at is how to extract text from a field. How to extract text from a field. And to do this, I'd like us to look at this. If you look at this, you are going to see a column email. Look at this column, email. You know, an email is made up of so many segments. You have the username, and you also have the domain name. Now, assuming you want to extract the usernames, for instance, if you're looking at the first email address, john24 at adventureworks.com, the username there is John24. Look at the second one, Eugene10 is the username. Look at the third one, is Ruben35. So I want to extract the whole of the usernames and have them as a new column. We're going to use this as we work. So to be able to do this, what I will simply do is I'm going to make use of the extract command. Remember, if I want to do it in such a way that it will create a new column for me, then I will go for add column. And that is mostly recommended here, because if I use the transform, it then means it will transform this column to the username, making it impossible for me to have the email address column again. So the best thing for me to do will be to create a new column, and that new column will be my username. So let's go on. Let's go on as we progress. I highlight the entire column, click on add column, then I go to extract, click on the drop down arrow. Now, there are many ways you can extract. I will do one now, but later you can try to practice each and every one of them. Don't stop your learning at what I've said. Try to advance your learning by trying to discover more things. That is exactly the best way to learn. Now, what you want to do will determine which of the options to choose. Remember, I want to extract the usernames. The usernames are those texts that appear before the at sign. And that at is a delimiter. At is a delimiter. So, because I want to extract the usernames, and usernames appear before at, I will now choose text before delimiter. Text before delimiter. And if I click on it, a dialog box will appear for me, asking me what is the delimiter. Because looking at this, at is a delimiter. Dot is a delimiter. .com can also be a delimiter. So as long as that thing keeps occurring in each of the cells, it can be termed a delimiter. So because at is my own delimiter here, so I will type at. Then when I type at, I will go to advanced and specify under scan for the delimiter. You click on this drop down and you will see two options: from the start of the input, from the end of the input. Now, looking at this now, this is the delimiter. So it's you that will determine, am I extracting from the start of the delimiter, or am I extracting from the end of the delimiter? But in this case now, I'm going to extract from the start of the delimiter. So what I will simply do is to select from the start of the delimiter, then I will click OK. And when I click OK, I will wait and eventually drag my scroll bar to the end. And you will notice that my username has been given a new column. And you can see the heading text before delimiter. You can now double click on this text before delimiter and then delete this and enter what you want to call it. And what do I want to call it? I want to call it user name. And I click enter. So that becomes so that's a very important exercise. And I hope you are following me. Can you just briefly, for a few minutes, pause the video and try to practice this for some time, get used to it, rigmarole around it, look at the neighborhood, and then you on the video again and continue with the lecture. We will continue by looking at another very important thing that is just similar to what we've looked at before now. If you look at the email address, we might need to extract only the domain name. Remember, we only extracted the username, but this time around, we want to extract the domain name. That is, as you can see it now, Adventure Works. Adventure Works. So it is located between two delimiters. You can see the first delimiter at, and then the second delimiter .com. Why did I call it a delimiter? At is here, at is here, at is here. In each of these cells, you see at. Then in each of the cells also you will see dot, or you can see .com. So I'm going to take at and .com as delimiters. This time around, I will instruct Power BI to extract for me this domain name that is between two delimiters. What do? I go to my extract. I like my column, go to transform, and I go to extract. Select, this time around, I'll select text between delimiters because my target is on the text that is between two delimiters. And if I click on it, I have to specify which delimiters am I talking about. The start delimiter is at, so I will choose at. And the end delimiter is .com or dot. I can say .com. And once I click OK, it will still leave this one as it is, but it will take me to the end. And you can now see that it has created a new column for me for the domain name. I double click on the header and I will rename it as domain name. And I press enter. That's domain name. Now, another thing we can do is we may choose to remove the hyphen between adventure and works. You may choose to remove the hyphen between adventure and works. In that case, I will have to select the column, domain name, and I will click on transform because this one involves removing something. So I will click on transform. And when I click on transform, I will look for replace, because I want to replace this. I will go to under any column, I will go to replace values, click on the drop down arrow beside it, and I will choose replace value. A dialog box will appear asking me two questions. One is value to find. And what value to find is this hyphen. So I'm going to tell it to find this hyphen and replace it with what? I can choose to replace with a comma or with anything I want, but I want to replace it with space. So I will leave it blank. I will just leave it blank. So replace with blank, and I will click OK. And you will notice that it has replaced it, joining the two of them, because I chose blank. But alternatively, I may go back there and tell it to replace with space. Assuming I want a space between adventure and work, let me undo this. I want a space so that it can be read as adventure works. So a space, I remove this hyphen and I replace with a space. So if I highlight this column, I go to replace value and I will select hyphen and I will click here and tap my space bar. Hit your space bar once and that will create a space. And that way, eventually, you can now see the space, the adventure works. I'd like you to practice this with me. Always learn to practice with me. Let your laptop be by you. And I think that's all we will look at on the text column. The next thing we're going to look into now is working with numeric values. How to work with numeric values. Numeric values, that is number values. If you look at the transform tab, you will see number column. Another number column, you will see the commands there. Statistics, standard, scientific, trigonometry, rounding, and information. If you look at add column, you will also see from number. You see similar commands. But one thing you're going to see about the command is that the commands are not highlighted. They are looking highlighted. The reason is because a number column is not selected. A number column is not selected. Now, if I look at this customer key contains numbers. And if you look beside it, you will see the format type is, the data type is numbers. So if I click on this column now, you will notice that some of them are highlighted now. And if I go to transform, you will notice that all of them are highlighted. If I click on a text column, it will become the highlighted. So that is very clear. So from the transform tab here, you will see the number column. The number column, look at the number column here. Now, of course, if you select a numerical column, you will notice the number column gets selected, like you can see now. And from the number column commands, you will see this, the statistics function. Click on the drop-down arrow to see some statistics functions. You will see the standard. You click on it to see add, multiply, subtract. You see scientific, and then the rest of them. So to explain these numeric values appropriately, I would like us to connect quickly to the product table. Let's connect to the product table. So to connect to the product table from the Power Query Editor, don't forget, you click on the Home tab, then go to New Source, and you select New Source, then you go to Text/CSV, click on Connect, and you navigate to the location where you have your data set. Then I want to select the product table. Look at the product lookup table. I click on Open, and it will start the connection. But when you select the product, I've selected the product and I click on Open, and the connection is going on. Now, after connecting, I can click OK, and I will have the product lookup table. Let me rename it and call it only products. So I'm That is what I like. You can leave your own the same way, but I like renaming it because it will help me in the future. So having looked at this, the next thing we're going to look at is, look at this now. Assuming we want to know, okay, assuming we want to know the number of unique products captured in this table. Assuming we want to know how many unique products or how many products do we have. Now, this will not appear in the analysis. This will not appear in the analysis. But it will help you to understand the data set that you are working with. So how many unique products was captured in the table? What we'll simply do is we'll click on the product name column. And when we click on the product name column, we go to the transform tab, and from the number column, we can select statistics because it's more or less like this, one of the statistics we are looking for. So we select the statistics, and you will see many options. I can choose count distinct values. Count distinct values. And once I choose this, you will notice that it will return back only one single value, showing me that I have 293 distinct products. 293 distinct products. And then if that is okay by me, at least you may ask me of what use is what I've done now. The use is that at least I know that the product table I'm working with has 293 distinct products. That knowledge alone will help you while you are running your analysis. That is what we call exploratory data analysis. To revert back to the data set, I will have to go to apply steps and click on the X to return me back again. So this is quite amazing. You can apply this in so many areas. You can apply this in so many things. We're going to look at a good number of areas we're going to apply it. Now, let us apply it briefly somewhere now. I want to connect to a data set now, and I click on new data set. There's a data set in our source data that is an Excel data set. I click on Excel workbook, I connect, and when I go down, I will have to come to this point and select all files to have all the files. Then you see sales data. You see sales data folder. Open it, and we may have to look at sales data 2020, sales data 2021, and sales data 2022. Now, let me connect to sales data 2022, and I click open, and then it will connect me to the sales data 2022. And quickly, I will want to rename it also. If I click OK, and as it connects, I will have to rename it here, and I want to call it sales data 2022. So now I've connected to this data now. You can see the data connected. These are the orders made. You can see order dates, stock date, order number, product key, customer key, and the rest of them. Now, if you look at this closely, you will notice that we have product key here. And it is possible that product key, so many products might repeat itself here because another of a product can be made more than once. And I want to now know how many distinct products that were ordered. That's how many products made it in the order within this period. I have to click on this column. I go to transform and I go to statistics, and I can now choose count distinct values. And once I do that, I will not realize that I have 102 distinct products that were ordered for. I can click on this X to return back. Now take a look at this now. To take this further a little bit, we have in our Power BI class, you notice that we have a table, Excel 102 exercise. Excel 102 exercise. I want to connect to this table now, and I'd like to show you something. So let's go ahead and connect to this table. I open my Power BI and I click on new source. Then I go ahead from file, click on Excel workbook. I'll click on connect. Then I will go to my desktop and navigate to the Power BI class. Click open it, and you can see the Excel 102 exercise. I will select it and click on open. Now, this is an Excel file, and as it's connecting, it will give me an option to select which of the sheets I want. That Excel file has two sheets, but the one I want to select is the sales data. So I click on sales data, and I click on open. This data set I am using, if you check the description section of the YouTube video, you will see them, you can download them so you can practice with it. So now look at this data set. Now you will see that you have the column year, you have months, you have type, different types of items, ice cream, frozen yogurt, you have salesperson, you have the region. I can scroll down to see more. You have the sales, that is the amount. You have the units sold and the order ID. Okay, now we want to explore a little bit so you can now see what I want you to understand from here. Now, looking at this table, we have yay. This is only showing us 2013. But if I want to know the number of distinct years that are captured, I can click on this arrow, and I will notice that I have 2013, 2014, 2015. I could have done this by clicking on this, go to transform, and I go to statistics, and I count the distinct value. You can see it's 3 now. So you can now see that the distinct number of years that are captured are just 3 years. That's what distinct value means. Now, remember I clicked here to have this. I can decide to filter out any particular year. If I click, I can filter this, filter 2014, and click OK. So what I will have now is only 2013. If you scroll down, you see it's 2013. I can click here and decide to filter 2013 and have only 2014. You can see only 2014 here. I can do the same also for 2015. Just try this. I can remove the filter and then have all my year out. The same thing is applicable if I want to know the product types available. I click on this arrow. I'll still have 1, 2, 3, 4 products. But in the case where I want to use the alternative method, I'll click on the column header, go to transform tab, and I go to statistics, and I select count distinct values. It tells me 4. So this is just an activity you need to do to know. You can't be working on this data without knowing how many products, okay, how many salespersons took part. You can click on this to know that Bishop, Lee, Parker, Cullen, and Watson are the salespersons. What about regions? Let's know how many regions. You can see that if this is sorted by west, west, west first, is it not central, central? Then again, you cannot see. But let us now click on this drop down arrow here. And you see that we have central, north, south, and west. So this is just a way of performing an exploratory data analysis around my data. Don't forget, if I want to know how many transactions as a whole that took place, how many transactions that took place in the entire data set, I can click any of the columns, then go to Transform tab, go to Statistics, and I'll tell it to count values for me. And when I say count value, you can see 444, meaning that I have 444 transactions that have taken place. I can click on this X to revert back again. That is the beauty of it all. Now let's go ahead. The next thing we're going to look at now is how to round up a particular number to some decimal places. For instance, if I have this product data set, you will notice here that under product costs and product price, you will notice that my decimal places are irregular. For instance, I have 34.99. I have 34.6442. I have 9.5. I have 33.6442 here. So this is quite irregular. In analysis, we need to regularize the decimal places. And that can be done using the rounding. If you click on the Transform tab, you come to number column. You will see rounding. So if I select this product price, I can come to rounding, click on the arrow beside rounding. I can choose to round up. I can choose to round down. If I round up, you can practice and check what it means to round up. But if I want to round up to a particular number of decimal places, I will click on round. And then a dialog box will appear asking me how many decimal places I want to round to. I may choose to round to 1 decimal place. So if I click 1, it means that I want to round it to 1 decimal place. I click OK. You will notice that this column has been rounded to 1 decimal place. Let me do the same thing on the unit, on the product cost. This is the product price. This is the product cost. The product cost means the cost of the product, the cost of production. The product price means the cost, the selling price. So I click on the product cost. I go to my transform because my intention is to transform this column. And I go ahead to my rounding. I select round. And I also make it 1 decimal place. And I click on OK. And that's amazing. Pause the video again. Try to go through. Find out what round up and round can be. And then let me know what it is. And that's quite amazing. And it's very much interesting. Now, another thing we can do is this. Though that might not make so much sense, but this product price now, I may choose to click on this product price, then come to standard. Under standard, I can do a good number of things. But let me go to statistics first. Under statistics, I can decide to sum. If I want to sum the entire column, I highlight the column header, I can click on sum. It will give me a single value showing the sum of the whole column. That might not make big sense with this. I can click on this, but if I go to my test data and I look at the column for sales. This is sales for each item. I may choose to know the total amount of money that was realized over the period of time. I click on this column. I can now go to transform and go to statistics and choose sum. Did you notice that it has given me the total amount of money realized? So that is when I want to know, as a quick process, the total amount of money that was realized over a period of time. I can click on this to reverse this. I can go ahead to know, to click on the cells, then click on the transform. I may choose to know the minimum amount of cells, the maximum amount of cells, the medium, the average amount of cells, and then I can try to count the values or count the distinct values. So these are some possible things that you can perform using the number column. It's quite amazing. I'd like you to please go through it and try to understand what we are dealing with. Now, one more thing I want to add on this before we go into another group is how to create another column. How to create another column using a mathematical operator. For instance, if you look at the product column, you look at the product data sets, and we take a look at the product price. This is the product price. Now, what if the company decides to give a discount? The company wants to give discounts, and they want to give 10% discount on all their products. And you want to know how much exactly should be the discount on each of the products. That can be calculated by clicking on the product price. But this time around, because I want to generate a new column, and that column will be showing me the 10% discount, I will click on the add column. Then I can now move on to standard. And remember, what I'm looking for is 10% discount. So I can go to percent, click on it, a dialog box will come out, and I will now choose 10. And once I say 10, it will give me the 10% of each of these product prices in a new column. So once I click OK, I will now see the 10% of each of these. This 10% of 35 naira or $35 can be $3.5 or naira, as the case may be. And that is quite amazing. So it becomes easy for me to note that for each of these product prices, this is the discount. So I can now decide to double click on this header and type discount cost. And that is what it will become now. That's quite amazing. That is very much interesting. So with this, we will quickly move into the next thing that we have. In our next class, we will continue with working with date and time. So I want you to take time to digest this class, rewind the video over and over again, and make notes. Try to connect to other data sets and revise what we've treated. In our next class, we will take time to look at what we've done and continue with the next. So thank you for coming to today's class. Just as you can see, that is quite amazing. We are going deeper and deeper into Power BI. I promise you that we're going to explore Power BI in details. And at the end of it all, there is no amount of data analysis that you cannot be able to carry out using Power BI. So thank you for being in class today, and see you in our next class